morning. I was flicking through social media the other day and I saw this face that I recognised, and it took me a moment to realise it was Robin van Persie, a famous footballer, Dutch footballer who represented his country at highest level, but also played in the English Premier League. A great player. And he was talking about his 13-year-old son. His son was selected for a team and he made it onto the bench. So he didn't get onto the field to start with, but he was hoping to be a substitute. The game wore on, he didn't get onto the field, and on the way home he was really disappointed and upset, complaining about everyone and everything, the coach, the manager, the other parents, the other players, everything. And finally Robin van Persie said to his son, "You know, I'm hearing you complain about everyone else, but there's nothing in this about you, about what you may or may not have done, what you may have contributed to this situation. You can complain all you like about all these other people, but that's not going to make a difference. It's not going to change anything. The only thing that's going to change is you. You can choose to complain and be a victim, or you can choose to take some responsibility and make a difference." A couple of days later was their next training session, and Robin van Persie thought, "I'll just hang around and see what happens." And to his surprise, his son was in there working harder than ever before. Running faster, running further, working harder, trying harder. His words had made a difference. But it left me thinking about complaining. You know, if I look into my own self and listen to myself, or through social media or the wider media, or just conversations with lots of people, lots of situations, there's a lot of complaining. We do a lot of complaining. And sometimes it's venting of frustration and we move on. But sometimes it's caught in the act of complaining, in this place of complaining. Woe is I. Everything else is better, and everyone else has got better opportunities, and pick, what about me? You know, what about me? Not always is the recognition that maybe part of the issue is with us, or that maybe there's something we can do about it, or maybe there's a lesson in this for us. There's a story about the ancient Hebrew people. They were wandering, they were oppressed, slaves in Egypt, and they escaped out of Egypt under Moses' leadership. God had heard their cries and Moses became the deliverer. They crossed the Red Sea and they were wandering towards a new future, a promised land. But it led through the wilderness. The wilderness was a hard place. And as they set up camp and stayed and then moved on and set up camp, life wasn't always easy. And they started complaining and grumbling. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt only for us to die in the wilderness, in the desert?" It was different. Back in Egypt, there was familiarity. And despite the harshness and the oppression and the difficulty, there was the known and the things they could control, the little things. They knew what food they would eat and it was familiar. They had somewhere to sleep that night, and there was work the next day even if it was horrible. But in the wilderness, they were out of control. And they didn't know how to get control back or what to do. And they complained. And it's interesting, in this story, God hears their complaining, but doesn't get angry or fight back. He says to Moses, "Look, mate, in the evening there's quail. It comes into the camp. There's quail everywhere. That's food. Take and eat. In the morning as the dew lifts, you'll see this white substance on the ground. Collect it, bake it into bread, and there'll be enough for the day for the whole family. Collect what you need and eat. If you collect too much, it'll go off. It'll spoil overnight. Just take what you need and there'll be enough food for everyone every day. You've got to trust me." And I think that was the big lesson, that in this new way of God, it's about faith and trust. That there is enough in this world for everyone. We don't need to accumulate and store and hold on and be jealous of one another and fight one another for stuff. There's enough for everyone if we will trust, have faith, look with each other in love and compassion. There's another story this week that Jesus tells. It's a story of a landowner who has a vineyard, and he goes into the marketplace where the workers all gather in the morning looking for work, and he selects some out to take them back to the vineyard to work, and he goes out through the day at various times and selects more workers to come to his vineyard. And the last time, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he's there and he gets the last of the workers and says, go and work. An hour later, it's the end of the day's work, and his steward gathers them together to pay them, and he pays those who have started last first, and they get a full day's pay. And then he pays the others. And when it gets to those who started in the morning, they're thinking, wow, the guys who started last, they're getting a full day's pay. Imagine what we're going to get. And they're shocked, they're surprised when what they get is a day's pay. And they start complaining and grumbling. And the landowner goes over and says, look, hang on, what's your problem? When I hired you at the beginning of the day, you agreed to a day's work for a day's pay. That's what you've got. You've got work. If I want to be generous to those who have come later, that's my business. It's my money. If I want to be generous, I can be. The fact was that those who started late in the day were those who never got picked, never got work. The older ones, the weaker ones who were left. The ones who got work at the beginning of the day would get work again tomorrow and the next day, the next day. They were the young, the fit ones, healthy. They always had enough. But these weaker, older ones maybe didn't have enough. In God's realm, there is enough for everyone. There's enough for everyone's need, but not for our greed. And Jesus is saying, share. That God is generous to everyone and gives us what we need. And when we live into this faith, there is enough for our world. This month of September, many churches and other groups are working through the seasons of creation, looking at the earth and its creatures and the forests and the rivers and the lakes and streams and sky and whatever else, celebrating its beauty and wonder, but also recognizing how we humans, because of our greed and our need to accumulate more and more to build bigger and bigger houses and buildings and all the other things we want, the earth is suffering. How we, in some parts of the world, accumulate more food and other things than we need, and other people starve to death. How do we share? How do we recognize there's enough? And that our role is to look after one another and the earth itself and its creatures. These stories are about complaining and grumbling. They're about recognizing what we need and what life is about, and being grateful and thankful for what we have and sharing that life in its abundance with others, recognizing the generosity of God towards us and trusting God. For the Hebrew people, it was a lesson in faith, of learning how to live in faith and trust, of letting go of their need to be in total control or think they were in total control, and to trust in this God. There's a story I read a while back. A group of graduates got together for a reunion and decided they should go and meet up with their old professor who'd retired. And so they gathered at his place and they're sitting around talking, all complaining about life and its challenges and struggles and their work and all the stress of life. And after a bit, the old professor said, "Who wants some hot chocolate?" And they all said, "Oh, yeah." So he went out into the kitchen, brought in this big pot of hot chocolate and this tray with an array of glasses, mugs. Some were crystals, some were glass, some were expensive, some they were well worn. Others were beautiful porcelain, a whole array, some beautiful and some, not so good. He set them down and said, "Help yourself to a glass and there, a cup mug, and there's the hot chocolate." And he watched as they selected the mugs, and then when everyone was sitting down drinking their hot chocolate, he made the observation. He said, when I invited you to get a mug, I noticed that you all picked the expensive, the better ones, the beautiful ones, the nice ones. No one picked the ordinary ones or the well-worn ones. And yet, what you really wanted was a hot chocolate. As you sat there drinking your hot chocolate, you looked at other people's mugs and envied their mugs. And yet, the mugs added nothing in terms of quality or taste or flavour or texture to the hot chocolate. The mugs added nothing. All they did was hold the hot chocolate. In some cases, they helped you not recognise the hot chocolate, to hid the hot chocolate. You were too concerned with the mug and its beauty to appreciate what was in it. You've been complaining about your life, about your work and money and stress. These are the things that contain your life. They're the tools, like the mug. But what about the life you're living? What about the life in the midst of it? You know, some people want and expect the best of everything, and they try and get it, but they forget about living the life. Others don't have much of anything, but make the most of everything they have and live life fully. It's not the things around us that we can't hold, our experiences, our work, our career, our homes, our cars, our clothes, or anything else. It's life. And that's a gift. It's like hot chocolate. So maybe take less notice of the mug, the things that contain your life, and appreciate the life you're given and live it to the full. Make the most of it, because it's a gift from God and God is in it. Amen.